Hey everybody, how you doing? This is Mocha Jasmine Johnson, your local activist community organizer, and I am here with Tim Denson, Athens Clarke County mayoral candidate. So Tim, tell me, what made you decide to run for mayor again? This is your second go around, isn't it?
It's my second one. I ran 10 years ago, about 12 years ago, I guess. Um, I think that there's a lot of needs going unaddressed in Athens, and I feel like I have a lot of experience as a former commissioner, as a school board member, as a community organizer, as a housing advocate, that I could really bring to try to tackle some of the problems we have. And I love this community. Athens has treated me super well in my entire life, and I want to be able to give everybody else in this opportunity the same kind of chances and good experiences that I've had.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about your journey because y'all, I met Tim before I became an activist. I was in the music industry. Me and my husband was promoting events, and then a club downtown decided they want to create a drink called Negarita. And one of the people we reached out to was Tim Denson that helped us to, organize our first rally and protest, and that was in 2016, and we've been marching and advocating since. So when I first heard about Tim, he was running for mayor against Nancy Denson. They
Correct.
both had the same last name, and I'm like, is this mother and son running against each other? So just tell me about that journey. How did you? Because I know
Yeah.
your background is in music too.
It is.
So
Yeah.
how did you get involved in politics?
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to 2011 when the Occupy Wall Street movement was happening, and there was an Occupy Athens movement here. And I started going to those. I was there on the first day of protest there. Met a lot of other awesome advocates, people who had been doing organizing for a long time. I kind of learned from them and worked with them, and that led to, in 2013, announcing that I was going to run for mayor. And a lot of that was because of the way that the mayor at the time, local government, was reacting to the protests, and they tried to pass an anti-urban camping law, so that Occupy protests couldn't happen anymore, really. But we realized that it was really going to hurt those who were homeless and stuff because they couldn't be on public properties after 10 p.m. So that was like the first time I got into local politics. That I'll go into commission meetings, go to meetings like that, trying to fight that bill, which we did defeat, thankfully. And so I just found myself kind of involved in organizing and politics. And then the mayoral election came up, and nobody had announced.
Okay.
I wasn't happy with the way that Mayor Nancy Denson had been, the direction she'd been going. So I said, I remember it was like in October, I was like, all right, if nobody has announced by Halloween, then November 1st, we'll start planning my campaign. And nobody announced. So November came, and we started planning. It was a very much like a bit of a punk rock campaign. Me and my fellow organizers and folks and activists, we didn't know what we were doing. We just learned it as we went. But it was an amazing experience, and I think we really built a bit of a community movement that we ended up turning into Athens for Everyone as a nonprofit after the campaign, because I lost, obviously. I wasn't mayor. Got in second place. And we did pretty well, and we turned all that into Athens for Everyone, in which then we started pushing for policies, pushing for better public transit, economic, racial justice components, and that all led to us putting forward a platform of candidates to run for commission, for mayor, and for school board. And all of the Athens for Everyone's endorsed candidates won, except for one, including myself as commissioner. So then served on commission for 4 years. The state legislature drew me out of my own district so that I could not run for re-election because they knew that they couldn't beat me at the ballot box, so they decided to try to beat me a different way and get me out of office. So I ran for school board. Been on the school board now for a little over 2 years, and also working as at the Homeless Day Service Center here in Athens, trying to get folks who are unhoused in housing. And have worked in a lot of other housing and public transit components as a community organizer. And here we are. Yeah.
I want you to talk a little bit about the redistricting so people can understand how that goes, because we talk about redistricting, gentrification. We talk about how people are pushed out of their home. Well, this was a move where they were pushed out of like their seat as elected official where they couldn't even run again. And so I've seen ways where, politicians have created laws. And I won't say it's right, but they create the laws in order to make what they're doing is right. And that was kind of foul.
Yeah, it's. I mean, right now it's happening in Texas. They're talking about doing redistricting to try to do a similar thing on the congressional level. But yeah, what happened to me and also Russell Edwards and Melissa Link, all three of us, the state has to redistrict every 10 years for population changes. And normally it's just like to make sure, that every commissioner is representing about 10% of the county, So, here right now about 13,000 people. And that usually only takes a couple of small moves just to make sure the population's right, because no like intense giant like developments have happened in the last 10 years. So it should have been some small things, and the county usually draws their own maps. We present to the state legislature, they pass them. That's the way it usually works. So the county drew the maps, again with those small things. We started doing public comment like we always do on it. And then our local state legislators, specifically the Republicans, all of them except for Spencer Fry, the one Democrat, all of a sudden announced that they had their own maps, had a press conference, put their maps out there, and these maps were very different. Drew me and two other commissioners out of our districts so that we could not even run for re-election. Drew us into districts that weren't up for re-election that year, and normally that would never happen as long as the kind of unofficial rule is that if there is unanimous support for the local maps, that the state legislature will just pass those local maps. And normally it's just like, it's a thing that we do every time. But unfortunately, 3 commissioners voted against the local maps. So then State Representative Houston Gaines came out and said, well, see, they don't have support for these local maps, so we're going to go ahead and put our own maps forward, and that's what we're going to vote on. Mm-hmm. Spencer Fry tried to make a compromise, drew up some maps again, and they said, nope, we're going with our maps. And those are the ones that were put through on the state level. And yeah, so it forced me and 2 of my colleagues out. What they did, though, also when they did that redistricting, they drew me into a new school board seat that was up for re-election. So that's why I ended up just running for that one, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So basically, they couldn't run again. They didn't have the fair shot. The three commissioners that were drew out, whether the constituents wanted them to continue to be their commissioner, they couldn't run again because of what state legislators do or did. And I will say that, Houston Gaines. I ran against Houston Gaines in 2020 and 2022 or 2021. Well, any case, it just seems like the state representative, such as Houston Gaines, has it out for Athens.
Yeah.
And just continuously trying to get involved in local politics, even though they said they're not, Right.
I know, yeah.
What do you think is their motive? Why do you think they're so driven to get involved in local politics and control what is going on in Athens? And this has been going on for quite some time now.
It has. I mean, this was one of the more egregious things, but yeah, it's been going on for a while. I don't know. I mean, I think it's for political purposes, obviously, and power, and the thing that makes me upset, though, even more than all of this, is like when honestly they like talk trash about Athens. Like again, like this is my home. I love this community. I fight for this community. I believe in this community. And then, a few weeks ago, Houston Gaines put up a post on all of the social medias, just basically disparaging Athens, saying Athens was like this gross, dirty, crime-ridden city. And it made me upset. I'm like, you're talking about my home, He's talking about his own home. He lives here. I'm like, it just blows my mind that you would ever want to kind of push that kind of narrative. But again, I think it's for political purposes. I mean, right? We see the same thing. Trump does the same thing where he's like talking about like, well, America, like all the big cities are trash, and that's why we have to make it great again because it's not great now, right? Mm-hmm. We have to and so I think it's the same kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But it's really sad, and I wish that we'd have state representatives who were proud of the communities they represent. I'm proud of Athens. Can it be better? Yeah, of course it can be better, and that's what I want to do. But it definitely upsets me, and I think the people of Athens, we deserve better representation at the state level.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I know that
Mm-hmm.
as far as our organization, we're continuously advocating for racial equity and for racial justice, but Athens is not the worst place. It's every place that you go needs work.
Yep.
And so you can't be silent. You have to continue to advocate for things. And I love Athens. Athens is a nice place to live. And I think it's changed a lot over the years.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
what do you think is the difference between what when you ran? You ran about how
About
many?
12 years ago.
12 years ago,
Yeah.
geez.
Yeah.
So there's a big difference.
Yeah.
What do you think is the difference between when you first ran and what's going to be the difference now? Because there's more people, quote unquote, woke and involved in
Sure.
politics
Right.
and demanding that things should be
Yeah.
a certain way. And they're trying to make Athens great again.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, things definitely have changed. I moved here. I've lived in Athens now for over 20 years, and then I ran the first time 12 years ago. Athens has definitely grown. I think also Athens, for good and bad, as we're talking about here, has gotten more attention. Has a little bit more of a magnifying glass on it, especially when it comes to like state politics and stuff. I think people realize that there's like things happening in Athens, and there's new interesting policies going on that Athens is being willing to try out and that people are pushing for and stuff. And so it's getting a little more attention. And that's, of course, that has, there could be a bit of a negative kickback from that too whenever people get upset. I think we've definitely, just be direct here. There's a lot of conservatives and people much further right wing than I am who have gotten upset about some of the things some of the changes that have happened in Athens, that Athens has gotten more diverse, that Athens has been pushing for more equity and more economic justice. Part of when you get economic justice and equity, part of what happens is those who have a lot of power and wealth, they lose some of that power and wealth.
yeah.
That doesn't make them happy. So yeah, those people are going to get upset. They're going to push back, and that's been happening some. No big surprise. Bring it. We're not going to change what we're doing. We need to make sure that everybody is having a successful, good life here, not just those who are the most well off. And yeah, that is going to require some compromise from those who do have a lot of money and power to give up some of that. And so it's not a big surprise. I think that's going to continue. But I know, again, I love this community. I think I know this community. The vast majority of people in Athens, they want those changes. They want changes that are going to improve everybody's life. I truly do believe that is like what the heart and soul of it is. And I think...
Stop 1 second. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
All right. Go ahead.
Okay. And I think that in the end, the famous King quote, that history, the arc is long, but it curves towards justice.
So let's dive in. So this Athens is your hometown.
Mm-hmm.
Athens is diverse, and one of the things that we advocate for is racial equity. And recently, a few months ago, it was crazy. We went to the mayor and commission. We were just trying to get a resolution, a racial equity, a BIPOC, a racial equity resolution passed to say, hey, we're going into times where we know that the government or the federal government is pulling back even on DEI and funding and all these different things, but commit Athens to doing the right thing in housing, youth and gang violence, and also dealing with Black and minority business enterprises. And to my surprise, they turned it down. The first round, they turned it down. So my question to you, well, it's passed now. Let me be clear. They've passed it now.
After about 4 months or so.
Yeah, 4 months. They said they were going to come back with their own resolution, or an ordinance, something that had more teeth, and came back with nothing. So we continue to advocate, and it's surprisingly it passed, but we're still advocating. The work is far from over. If you were elected mayor, what are you going to do to ensure that, like you said, everyone is being served in Athens, the BIPOC community. Right now they're dealing with immigration rights and people facing deportation. We're dealing with housing crisis. We're also dealing with some gang violence. It's not the majority of our community, but these are the things that we're dealing with here.
Yeah. No, I mean, I completely support that resolution and what was in there. And I know there was also a lot of pushback from some commissioners saying, well, resolutions don't matter. We don't want to, like, resolutions do matter. For one thing, also, I think just like as some public education is like, the commission passes resolutions all the time that do have teeth. Sometimes if you're going to settle a lawsuit, or if you're going to renew a contract, there's some of these things, there are resolutions that do those things. The resolution means that the commission is resolving to do something. And sure, and a resolution like this, it is more of a value statement, but like, that's important. That's your beliefs, right? I mean, it's important for our community to understand what the mayor and commission, the local government, what their belief system is, and making sure that it's in line with what the community's belief system is. So I think those things are very important because they help guide our ordinance, they help guide our laws, they help guide the way we govern. And back whenever I was on the commission, one of the things that we pushed for and that we got put in place was a disparity study to happen.
Yes.
Because the way the federal government does and stuff like that is that you can only take explicit, intentional steps to give like minority businesses, an extra privilege or something like that to like really focus on them. You can only do that if you can prove that there's been a historic disparity. So we had to have this disparity study done. It came back, no big surprise, I think, to any of us. It showed that yes, there has been historic disparity amongst racial business, black businesses, women businesses, and other businesses of color. And they came back with a whole list of recommendations. And I think it's also important to say that the school district did the same around the same time. So we're doing with this on the school board too. And actually, some of the recommendations are very similar. Some of the things are saying that a lot of it's been like that the county's been doing things just the easy way, is I guess how I'd say it. They'll do these big bulk contracts instead of doing a contract for maybe they have like 10 or 12 services coming up for leisure services, and instead of contracting that out, they're like, let's just put them all in one big bundle and just give one contract. And you know what? We know that other company that's done it for a while. Look, they put a bid in. We're going to do it with them. And so then ended up being like the biggest, most powerful, most well-connected contractors are the ones that get all the contracts. And no big surprise from, again, the racial disparities that have been happening, that those are usually white and male-owned. And so one of the recommendations was that we need to start unbundling those contracts, make sure that we're doing them on an individual basis so that there's smaller contracts that smaller, more local businesses and businesses of color have the capacity to apply for. So that's a recommendation that's happened on both sides. I fully support that. And since that disparity study came and showed that there was a disparity, we do have the ability now to set up a program that is going to specifically target businesses of color to make sure that we're trying to give them preference to make sure that they're getting those. And so I fully support us rolling that out. But there's a lot of other things we need to do when it comes to development and housing. Again, these disparities really show. Whenever I was serving on the Georgia Initiative for Community Housing team, one of the biggest housing problems that we found that happens in Athens and honestly in Georgia and across the South as a whole is a problem with heirs properties. So that a lot of times there would be black families that would have their property, and then whenever the matriarch or patriarch of the family dies, they didn't necessarily have a will written out that was directly showing who the property was going to go to. And this has happened a lot in some black communities, and because of that, it creates this legal ambiguity that makes it really difficult to prove who can have it in the courts. It just causes a lot of problems. And it actually showed that that was like one of the biggest issues that we've had specifically in black communities here. And if you look at the tax lien list for like properties that are being sold on the courthouse steps, I'll pull these up every once in a while just to look on there. Almost always, I'll go through and I'll check that who says the owner is. And you look it up, the owner died 10 years ago, 8 years ago. And these properties are heir properties that fall into that category. Um, Now I've been researching the different ways that we could do some solutions around that. And one of the things I want to do is create what we call a tangled properties title fund.
Say
So,
it again. It's called a
well, I'm calling it tangled properties
tangled properties.
title
Okay,
fund. So
title
it tangled
fund.
so that the property is tied up because the person who owned it died. Nobody knows who it got passed on to, in the family. So nobody has control over it. Nobody's paying the taxes on it. And that's whenever you start seeing those investment property owners coming in. They're like, ooh, they start swooping in trying to pick those properties up. So the idea would be that we'd have a special title fund that would help fund families to be able to figure this out because it's expensive. That's a big part of this. It's an expensive thing to get into. And so we can help families get that sorted out so that those properties are staying within the family, not getting sold on the courthouse steps, not getting sold off for pennies on the dollar to investment funds. And then that is a lot of times what leads to the gentrification because somebody bought this property up really cheap and they're going to all of a sudden come in and try to get a zoning request and build, who knows, a gas station, whatever it's going to be, things that don't fit the community there. So that's one of the things that I want to do to help try to clean that up. And also try to bring into using Athens, it's what they call, there was a title for it. I looked this up the other day. Death deeds.
Death deeds.
Transfer on death deeds. And what it does is it's a really, really simple deed transfer, like one page, that a person can fill out specifically so that this doesn't happen whenever they die.
Okay.
Makes it it's really cut and dry, really simple so that they can just state who this is going to pass on to. Without having to get into a bunch of lawyers with expensive wills or expensive processes. So that's another thing I want to make sure that we're making available to people here in Athens so we can get away from that. And because again, that really ties in and leads to, I think, a lot of the gentrification issues we have. It leads to a breakdown in the transfer of that generational wealth that should be happening in a lot of Black families. It's not. And again, a lot of times it's because historically, especially in the South, a lot of those Black families just didn't have the connections that they would need to have to take all these steps, and they definitely weren't getting the supports from the courts and from the government to make sure those things didn't happen. So I think it's honestly the government's responsibility to step in and try to actually provide some support to fix those problems that were happening generations ago that we're still feeling right now. And I also want to, going back to that housing too, again, the generational things that have happened. We still have here in Georgia and in Athens deed restrictions on there.
Can you expand on so that listeners, they know what a deed restriction is?
Yeah, I mean, talk about this. This gets to the root of, right?
Yeah, the summary real quick.
It does. That especially when going back an earlier mid 19th century. Whenever zoning codes started getting this really important part because there was a lot of growth happening in cities, that real estate groups and attorneys and cities started making it kind of the de facto thing that you would do, that we wanted to keep the segregation. We wanted to have white neighborhoods, we wanted to have Black neighborhoods. And so that in those white neighborhoods, they would write into their deed, and you could actually go, like in some cities, you could go to the courthouse and they would have language drafted up that you could just insert into it, make it easy for you. That would state, this house can be sold to anyone except for, people of African American descent. Sometimes they'll have like Hispanic descent. Sometimes they'll have things in there about Native Americans, basically stating that people of color will not legally be able to buy this house or this property and ever live in this neighborhood. And when people would try to break those, like the people around the neighborhoods and the communities and sometimes the cities would take it to court and be like, hey, you're violating this deed. The crazy thing is, so the federal government obviously did pass laws outlawing that. But the wild thing is that those deed restrictions still in our courthouse right now exist. They're there. Like, for one thing, I think that we should pass something where we can get those removed. Other cities are starting to do this, where you remove them and they are crossed out from the deed. You're not erasing the history. It would stay there just so we know what our history was and what we need to avoid, but it will no longer be a legal part of the deed. And the other reason I think we need to do it is because we're living in scary times right now.
Right.
I don't think anything's a guarantee right now. I didn't think I was going to be living in a country that is, threatening to take U.S. citizens or those who are applying for citizenship and deport them to countries they've never even stepped foot in before. I didn't think we'd be dealing with those things. I didn't think we'd have National Guard marching through city parks detaining people. So I don't think we should necessarily accept that federal law is always going to be in place to protect those things. So I think we need, on the local level, get rid of those deed restrictions so they no longer exist. And if anything ever did change, they no longer would be part of those deeds anymore.
So on the local level, do you think that would address some of the housing shortages that we're having? How can we balance that out? Investors are still coming in. When I first moved to Athens, I would say about 12 years ago, it was a small town. I remember they were fighting to not have Walmart downtown. It was just so interesting. These were things we never seen before. A community so active, fighting for certain things to not happen, to keep their town small. And so that drew our attention. You running for mayor drew our attention. We just start paying attention to like local community and politics. So now Athens, I see high rises. I see there's a Target downtown now. I think they're trying to build like a grocery store, or they already did like a somewhat of a grocery store, and then you can live up top of it.
Yep, over there off of Prince.
Yeah. It's cute. I can't say some of these things aren't cute, but are they addressing local housing crisis? So what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, to me, housing is the number one issue facing our community right now, just housing and affordability in general. And we are in a housing crisis, and there's two really big ideas that we need to do. One, we need to build more housing because we honestly don't have enough supply. That's why housing costs are so expensive. But two, we need to be building the kind of housing that people in Athens need. So a much larger percentage of that housing needs to be affordable housing. So that's two of the big things I think we need to be driving for: is build more housing, make a larger percentage of it more affordable.
Let me ask you this: what is affordable? Because some people would say this word being thrown around, affordable. Like, affordable for me is different for you, different for somebody else that doesn't even have a house. So how would you look at that as a mayor?
Generally, housing affordability is looked at as that housing should never cost more than 33% of what your budget is. So that's a way that you can transfer it between different people. If it is, then they say that you're basically that cost is going to be too much for you, and that includes like utilities and stuff too. And so there is a way that we can measure it. Then that we can look at what's the area median income for Athens, which is measured every year and created by HUD, the Housing Urban Development. So there is ways that we can measure that and measure the affordability. Now, the problem is that Athens has one of the largest wealth disparities in the country when it comes to accounting. We have some extremely rich people, and we have some extremely poor people, and we have a lot of people in the middle, but honestly, most people in the middle are down towards the bottom still. So when we talk about what kind of housing we really need, we need housing that is going to be affordable for those who are at honestly 50% of the area median income, like half of what the area median income is. And so that's something that we can do. When we already started doing this with the inclusionary housing policy that was passed back whenever I was on the commission, and I was one of the commissioners that served on that committee that created. And we're seeing some positive things finally from that. The way that worked is it said, okay, and because unfortunately in Georgia, and this happens a lot, that local governments are blocked from doing a lot of things. And other states, they have done a mandatory inclusionary zoning, basically saying to developers all right, if you're going to build in this area, you have to reserve 20% of the units to be defined as affordable and subsidized. Unfortunately, in Georgia, we can't do that, not unless the state legislature changes some laws. So what we can do is we can make incentives for developers to do that. And so that's what the policy that we created, that we passed, does, is it says, all right, if you want to be able to have more density, build more apartments in this building you're doing than what you're legally allowed to do. If you want to, there's a couple other things they can do. If you want to basically build more apartments on the ground floor instead of retail, because they make more money off of apartments than they do retail, then you can also do this. But to get those benefits, you have to agree to have 15% of the units you have, 20% of the units you have be affordable units. And their options are they can either build those units, right there as part of their project, or they can put the amount of money it would cost to build those units into the affordable housing fund that the county's created. Um,
So that exists right now.
it does exist,
That
and
people,
yes,
and is it being utilized?
it is finally being utilized. As I think the county is finally starting to be able to learn how to use it, and developers are becoming more aware of it. There is, I want to say there's about $6 something million in the fund right now. They also use that policy to help shape the mall project, to put the affordable units in the mall project in a similar way. But here's the issue though, is that whenever I was on that committee, we were supposed to create a series of inclusionary zoning policies. That was only the first of 3 or 4. The problem is that committee has not met since I was on it.
Oh, wow.
And so those other policies have not been created. So we're missing out on a lot of other developments and other zoning codes that we could be getting inclusionary housing happening, and we desperately need to. Because again, that policy works. We're showing it works. And also, this is the policy that Atlanta's used really successfully in a few places to really increase the amount of affordable housing there too. And Atlanta is one of the few metropolitan areas in the United States that's finally seeing housing costs stabilize and kind of come down. And a lot of it's because of the way they've been using this policy. So we need to be embracing this policy much more, putting in those other zoning policies. And so if I was elected mayor, the very first policy assignment I would be giving would be to create this committee again and get them working on the inclusionary zoning policies so that we can create more affordable housing. Because we are building more housing now. But unfortunately, it's the vast majority of it is for students or way too expensive for the common Athenian to be able to live in. But again, if we had this policy, we'd be seeing more affordable housing happening. And then what we could be doing with that affordable housing fund is we need to be using that money to help build the deep subsidy housing. And what I mean by that is like that because there's some folks in this, even 50% AMI, like they're more like 20%, 30%. People who are dealing with a lot of barriers to housing that really need a lot of support. We could be using the money that we get into that fund to build that kind of housing where we could actually have it subsidized, work with the Athens Housing Authority, work with other partners to have a deep subsidy housing built there, so that people, can actually stay and enjoy their lives in Athens instead of being pushed out into further counties, further away, or just pushed into homelessness, as we're seeing too.
You hear some people say that there's not enough space to build more houses in Athens. Do you think there is or not?
You got to build up. There's so much air up with us. You got to build up. Yeah, I mean, it's true. Athens County is the smallest county in Georgia. It's a desirable place to live, and we are. You're right. All estimates show that we're supposed to have 30,000 people coming here over the next 10 years, which is about 3,000 people a year. That's gonna happen, and also just like people are moving more to the south too, so we need to be prepared for it. You're not gonna be able to stop it. You're not. If we try to stop it, if we just have like a housing moratorium, which I've heard talked about, what you're gonna do is you cut off the supply of housing. Housing is gonna get more expensive, and people who don't have as much wealth are gonna be pushed out. That's gonna get worse and worse and worse. We're gonna see housing costs get even more expensive. Okay. So I think that we're gonna have to have, because of that, we're gonna have to have more density, because we can't build out, we need to build up.
Okay, so I have a couple more questions. I have a couple more questions here. All right, so let's talk a little bit about before I jump into the jails and what's going on there. Mm-hmm. Youth and gang safety. How do you foresee that? You are on the school board, so. Mm-hmm. You have an experience sitting as a previous commissioner.
Right.
So what goes on in the city and how that operates. And then also you've had experience sitting on the school board, correct, seeing what goes on in the schools, from the fights, mm-hmm, the disciplinary, and how that operates. What is your feedback on addressing some of those issues and to make sure that the youth are safe?
So one thing, I really wish that we would, more as a community, stop and think why are like gang violence and stuff that it's happening. It's maybe it's been here for a few years now and gotten worse. But it's like we need to stop and think, why is this happening? Why are kids going into these situations? Why are they feeling like the best place they can be accepted is in this gang culture? Because like honestly, I can tell you this, like if you just react with, we're gonna put them all in jail, we're gonna just put more cops out there, put more cops in the schools. It doesn't work. We need to get to the root of it. Why is this happening? And a lot of times it comes down again to like a lack of these community supports. That we do have a lot of kids growing up in poverty. We do have a lot of kids growing up where their parents aren't being supported. They're not making the wages they need to. That there's a lack of health care and mental health care and just opportunities and stuff. Like we need to get to the core of it. And that's not easy. What's easy is to say, hey, we're going to put more cops on the street. It's easy to do that. Throw some money out, put some more cops on the street. But that's not going to actually solve the problem. To solve the problem, there's no shortcuts here. We're going to have to really get down the root of it. And so we're going to have to start funding those supports for not just these kids, but their families, their parents, and everything too. But when it comes down directly to the youth, things that we could be doing right away is I want to continue and expand the youth initiative that the school district has done with the county, so that we are now offering finally like after school sports, arts programming, camps for these kids who are in elementary school and middle school, getting to them when they're really young, getting them interested in other things, getting them around their peers in a really positive environment, getting them around new mentors that can help them, whether that's a coach or an art teacher or a cross country coach, whatever it is. And we've been seeing some really positive results from that already, especially in the school district with just even attendance. That those kids that get involved in those things, they start showing up to school more because they like what they're doing.
Art, sports,
yeah,
stuff like that. Yeah.
And I can say like from my work as doing housing case manager for people who are in homelessness, I got an amazing experience. I didn't even bring it up. I was visiting one of my families that I work with. They had 2 kids in the house. And this family had been living in a homeless shelter for months before, really unstable. Kids were not having the best attendance, just really struggling with school. And I was there and was talking to them, and I was like, no, how are the kids doing with school? And the mom told me, like, oh, they're doing better. And she's like, oh, yeah, especially the youngest one. Like, they're excited about school now. They're on the soccer team. And they had joined the soccer team of their elementary school through this program. Is this program also has it where scholarships where you don't have to pay at all. Anybody can get into it. And so this kid all of a sudden was self-esteem was improved, attendance was improved, their academics was improved. So I think putting some of those supports in place.
What's the name of this program, just in case anybody's watching, parents?
I believe. I mean, there's calling it the Athens Youth Initiative, I believe. But yeah, every elementary school has an opportunity now. They have basketball, soccer, volleyball, and then they've now rolled out arts. There's football is also involved. I mean, it's if your kid, and this is for boys and girls, are doing girls flag football now starting this year. And again, we make sure that cost is not a barrier. That's why we're funding this. Both the county government and the school districts coming together to fund this, which I think is a beautiful way of us working together. So please, if there's parents out there, talk to anybody at your school that get you plugged into it. All the kids should be coming home with papers every year, about how they can get involved in it too.
What about educational wise? Are they going to have any additional resources for tutoring? Is there anything out there? What would you want to do? Because I worked in Athens, Clark County, Athens Tech as a GED educator, and there was a dropout thing going on. It seemed like it was also court ordered at different times. If you were like 16 and you kept getting in trouble, or 17 and you don't have enough credits, now you court ordered to get the GED or go through a program. So what do you think about the educational addressing that or helping that gap? Or what can the mayor do about that?
Well, a big part of it is that I will definitely be reaching out and be very proactive about having the mayor and commission and the school board meeting. What I would have to do would be twice a year, every semester. So that we're working together to find those things. So a lot of times it's just we don't know necessarily what the needs are of the other group, and might be one of the simple things of like, oh, well, we have that facility or we have those resources and be able to plug it in. On the school board side, something I've been pushing for big time because absenteeism is a huge problem, and of course that if you're not in school, you're not doing well at school.
Right.
I can tell you that too. I wasn't necessarily always the best student back in the day I was in there, but I got through it. I've been pushing for us to have to have more case managers and social workers in the school.
Yeah.
Because again,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
these kids aren't. You talk about elementary school kids; they're like not showing up because they're bad kids. They're not. A lot of times they're not showing up because mom has to go start her shift at 6 a.m. and Big Brother is the one in charge of getting this kid to the bus stop on time. Or the kids aren't necessarily getting food or not getting enough rest or they're sleeping, oversleeping. There's a lot of different issues, transportation issues. Maybe they're experiencing some housing instability and they're having to stay at aunt uncle's house and the bus doesn't pick them up from there. You never know, and so that's why we need to have social workers and case managers there. So whenever they say like, all right, look, all of a sudden we see little Timmy here, all of a sudden his absenteeism has really picked up. He's been missing from school. We would have one of the case managers, social workers, sit down with that student, sit down with the parents, have a meeting, and not in the kind of way of like you're doing something wrong. And kind of like, hey, what's happening? We just noticed this. How can we help you?
Yeah.
What's leading to this, and how can we help step in to take care of that, and be really proactive with it. And so that's one of the things I think we need to do. We did increase funding the last year, not this year, but last year for more social workers. I pushed for it in the budget for this year. Didn't get it this year, but I'm hoping for next year we can have it in there. So.
Okay, so two more questions. The jails and law enforcement. I would say that we've seen a different type of approach to law enforcement since back in the days. It seems like there's more of a policing and increase in presence, and we've had a couple complaints about racial profiling in various ways, people getting arrested for not showing their ID, or recently someone called the police on a black man and they fabricated. They said they saw him get into multiple cars. So he came out of the gym. He was talking to his wife on the phone. He went to his car. She wasn't ready yet. She was in the store. So he went in his car, grabbed something, and went and sat on the side bench. So she called the police and said that he was breaking into cars, multiple cars. The police shows up, starts questioning him. Luckily he didn't get arrested, but we've been getting those type of complaints. So in summary, what do you think about the jails? Because there's been 3 deaths. Well, there's been 4 now.
4, yeah.
There's been 4, even though technically the 4th one was at the hospital, but it started at the jail. Right. Yeah. And so we're just trying to get down to the root of the problem, what is going on. What do you think about that, and also the local policing?
I mean, the death of the jail definitely is very concerning, and I think there's multiple folds that go into it. If somebody goes into the jail, right, they're being forced to go there. They're not going there on their own will. And so when you're forcing somebody to go somewhere, you're also taking responsibility for their well-being, right? And I know my understanding is that they're stating that fentanyl has been the cause of these deaths. And if that's so, we need to ensure that fentanyl is not getting into our jails. It is deadly. It will kill people, especially in an environment like the jail where you can't have any kind of extra harm reduction or anything. So, I would want to work with the sheriff and jail staff just to see what other resources that we could help them with to ensure that fentanyl is not getting in there, whether it's getting in there via inmate or guard or through some other kind of contraband kind of way. Whatever kind of resources we need to, I would want to work with them to try to make sure those resources are in place. Now, another big problem that I would continue advocating for is that we just need to have less people sitting in jail. It's very unfortunate that our state legislature, including some of our local state reps, including Houston Gaines, have recently passed legislation that mandates that people who in the past could go through just with a signature bond and go to court, go in front of a judge, the judge could release them because it was a non-violent small offense, like loitering. But now, for a lot of individuals, they have to go to jail. They have to sit in there until they can go and in front of a judge. They have to have bail put on them. And why? The thing that the disregard that doesn't seem that these folks don't seem to get, or I guess they just don't care, is it's expensive to have somebody in jail.
Right.
And guess what? Guess who pays for it? Not the inmate.
The taxpayers. And that's what I'm like, the taxpayers are paying for this.
So
And it's just a merry-go-round.
right, and we talk about these are supposedly fiscal conservatives who are pushing for this. It's like, no, if you're truly a fiscal conservative, you're not going to want us to be spending well over $100 a day per inmate to keep them in jail when the judges agree that they're not a danger to society and don't need to be in jail. And what that does, it also puts more and more stress onto the sheriff's deputies who are working there. More and more people for them to have to keep an eye on. More and more people for them to have to do pat downs on. And therefore, more and more of a chance for things like fentanyl and other things to get into your jail. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, are we just going to take an approach to law enforcement where we're just going to be mean and want to punish people? Or are we going to take a smart approach that's effective and efficient, and also a good use of tax dollars? So, I mean, that's something I want to be working with our state legislature, is just getting away from these policies. I mean, we had Republican Governor Nathan Deal, who was governor a few years back. He understood these things. He started taking some real steps.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
Us,
They've basically stripped back a whole, like what I would say probably 70% of what he had passed for criminal justice reform, or to even give people more liberation, to take people away from the jails, give them more of a second chance.
Right, and we've seen jail populations, especially over the last few years,
go up,
really start to build up again here, including here in Athens. So that's another thing that I think we're gonna have to really keep an eye on. And when it comes to our policing in general,
Wait, before you go into that,
sure.
I want to ask you a quick question.
Yeah.
So I know that the sheriff has been asking for more money. Mm-hmm. He's saying it's understaffed. We've heard that, and we know that it's understaffed. It's a real thing. Sure. But recently I heard that the mayor commission didn't grant him any more funding. Is that correct?
My understanding is that the budget that ended up passing did put extra funding in there.
So they did put extra funding in there. Okay.
And I would support doing that. I mean, since we had that pay study come out for all public safety pay study, and they put the sheriffs at a different level than police. That was obviously a problem. And I don't think it was done in some evil way. I think it was done in a very you had just like a mathematician, a statistician, just coming up with a graph. But whenever we're looking at it as policymakers, we should have realized that that's going to cause some problems, and it has.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that we need to put in place long term to really kind of resolve and fix that pay disparity between the deputies and our police officers.
Yeah. Okay, so now on to the police.
Yeah, and
it's changed over the years. It's less community policing. As far as our organization, we don't work with the police in any type of way. There's no type of partnership. There's no type of like, hey, AADM, this is going on, So it's shifted over the years to where we have come to realize that if we're trying to hold the police accountable in any way, if someone files a complaint with us and we reach out to them, it just never works out for the victim. So now we're like looking at it, they moved away from community policing, it seems like, and they've amped up more. I see them more on the highways. It's different. It's different. So what are your thoughts about local policing now?
Yeah, I mean, so a few things, and I definitely do support community policing, and I would want us to get back towards that being our number one approach. And I think that's something that we can easily do, and that's the direction that I think that the mayor and commission needs to give if that's not happening anymore. Also, I think that we need to have the Public Safety Civilian Oversight Board, PSCOB, really kind of put back into a place the way it was designed to be and intended to be. Instead of, my understanding is that in a lot of times, a lot of situations, it's been kind of sidelined and not really given the role that it was supposed to. And so, that's unfortunate, because I think, again, and this, this is something I was saying back when I was on the commission, and we, that came through the committee I was on, and I worked on that and helped get it passed. And one of the things I was saying is, like, we don't need to be I think some people look at it as a negative thing, as like as an anti-police thing. I mean, it's not like, no, it's a pro-community thing.
Yeah. Really, what
it's designed to do is just to make sure that policing is happening in the way that our community wants to see it and is protecting the entire community. It's only a negative thing if you decide to look at it that way, in an antagonistic kind of way, and it shouldn't be that way. So I would want to bring that back in and have it designed the way it was supposed to be. And lastly, I want to make sure that the police are able to really focus on what they're needed for, to keep our community safe. When there's dangerous crimes, when there's dangerous situations, when people have weapons or people are in danger, the police need to be available to respond to those things. That's what they're for. It should not be. We should not be expecting the police to respond to, mental health crisis or a suicide situation or a domestic dispute or dealing with just homeless individuals sitting outside of a store. These kind of things that are not a danger per se. And then the police are the ones that we're looking at to have to solve all those problems. And I mean, if you're going to have that kind of approach, you're not going to have the public safety that we deserve. And so one of the things that I want to do is create within our public safety structure what I'm calling community ambassadors. And we could come up with whatever term we want to. But right now, we're working with like community ambassadors. And these would be folks who are not armed, but they would be county employees who are trained in de-escalation. They're trained in resource management. So if there is somebody that's homeless, that's caught creating a situation, if there's just like a minor nuisance problem, if there is possibly a mental health situation happening with somebody downtown, they would have the ability to deal with that situation in a way that doesn't require, again, any kind of punishment or weapons or anything. But another thing, a role that I think they can do would be to be just that, again, an ambassador to the community from the county. So, maybe there's a homeowner who is, strapped and their property taxes are getting too high. They're on a fixed income. They don't know about the homestead exemptions and how they work. A community ambassador could even come to their house to be able to tell them, like, oh, this is the resources that are available to you. I can help you apply for these homestead exemptions so we can make sure that you can stay in your home. Serve those different kind of roles that right now we have a gap for. And again, we're trying to expect our police to kind of fill that gap. So I think that would be a really extra layer that would, again, remove police from some of the situations that I think they shouldn't be involved in. I don't think they necessarily want to be involved in. And then also make the entire community safer. And that's not going to replace necessarily our like co-responder units. I think those are still really important when you do have potentially dangerous situations with somebody in a mental health state, something like that. Those, I in my day job, I come in contact with those folks all the time, and they're doing great work. And I think it's a great team component the way we do it. So I want us to keep funding that and potentially expand that. And an exciting thing about that is, we rolled those out, a few years back when I was on the commission, and now we're seeing some of the counties and the surrounding areas, even some of the more conservative counties, start to put in place co-responder teams, which is really exciting.
Yeah. So the co-responder teams is basically the ones that go out when there's a mental health crisis, right? What else do they go out for? And they're part of the police department.
So you have a police officer who's specifically trained in dealing with these kind of situations, but then you also have a licensed social worker who works with them, who has that mental health background, behavioral health background, and case manager background. And so, they'll go to, potential domestic violence situations, mental health situations, suicide calls, dealing with homeless individuals sometimes, a lot of different things there. So, yeah.
Okay, so what is the final thing you want people to know? If you are elected to Athens Clarke County as the next mayor in 2026, right? 2020?
Yes.
2026.
Yep.
What is the difference that you think you can bring to this community that they've never had before, or what do you want them to know?
Sure. So, I think I have a track record of being creative, thinking outside the box, and tackling some of our bigger problems and actually getting solutions created. I've been able to find ways to get things done, even when I'm having to work with people that I don't necessarily get along with all the time, or a mixture of different kinds of people. Like, I will meet people where they're at. I will sit down with them, and I can get things done. Whenever I was on the commission, we got a living wage ordinance for all county employees put in place. We got the co-responders put in place. We got the low-income homestead exemption created that I helped draft. Free public transit, a bunch of other things. I know at times, back when I ran for mayor, I had definitely some criticism of like, oh, well, Tim's got some great ideas, but he doesn't actually know how to get them done. They can't get them done.
Oh yeah, you always hear that. Like they're not gonna be able to do that.
Right. And I mean,
And
man,
we got the free public transportation, and they were saying that's not gonna happen.
they told me it wasn't happening. And guess what?
And then I saw that happen.
We got it done, and we got a lot of these things done, and they've been improving people's lives. And that is what I plan on bringing if I'm elected as mayor. Is I have the big difference between what's now and when I ran 12 years ago is that I have the experience. That I have worked, I've been in the state capitol, I've been in City Hall as a commissioner, I've been in the school board, I've been working as an advocate for public transit, for mental health, for housing. A lot of the biggest issues we're talking about, I intentionally put myself in those workspaces so I could understand them and learn them, so I could be prepared to be able to lead this community and with the bigger problems they have. So I would be able to, on day one, understand our problems, understand the different tools that we have to work with, and understand how to actually solve those problems. And doing it while working with the community, not just for the community.
So we're going to play a real quick game called Know Your Rights, because it's very important that you know your rights in any and everything that you do, especially if you're advocating for something. So the AADM created these Know Your Rights games. They're card games. You can find them on our website at www.aadmovement.org. Click on the store if you like. All right, Tim, so you're supposed to know a lot, right?
I hope so.
All right, true or false? Police need a search warrant to search your car during a traffic stop.
That is false.
All right. Ding, 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 ding. You are right.
Yeah.
Explanation. If an officer have probable cause, they can search your car. And probable cause mean that they can smell weed smoke coming out the window, even though you threw the blunt out the window. You know that? Oh, okay. All right. So
keep your window up.
Keep
You don't have to roll your window down.
Yeah, just talk to him through the window like that.
Yeah.
Then until he said, pass me your license and your registration, and you roll the window down.
Correct.
Okay. All right. All right, what should you say if an officer asks to search your belongings? Okay, I'll give you a couple of answers.
Okay.
A, go ahead. B, I consent. C, I do not consent to this search.
Say, I do not consent to this search.
All
Definitely.
right. Ding, 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 ding. You are correct. All right, I'm going to ask you 2 more questions.
Okay.
All right. True or false? You must always provide your ID if asked by the police. Now, this is a good one.
I believe that's true. It's false?
It's false.
Oh.
Okay, so in some states, so you better learn what state you live in. In some states, okay, you are only required to provide an ID if driving or if there is reasonable suspicion of a crime. Keep that in mind, y'all.
But again, that reasonable suspicion is up to the
Yes.
police officer.
Yeah.
That's what, yeah.
Yeah. And he can come up with a
Right,
reasonable cause because
yeah.
you look suspicious. All right, so let me see which one here. All right, this is a good one. This is the last question, y'all. If an officer knocks on your door and asks to come in, do you have to let them in? A, yes, always. B, no, unless they have a warrant. Or C, only if they are polite.
Only if they have a warrant. Ask to see that warrant.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
And there you have it. It's
Yeah.
very important for you to learn your rights. Thank you for joining me.
Definitely.
On
Thanks for
Mocha
having
Speaks
me.
Podcast.
Yeah, this was great.
Yes. And so if you want to hear this podcast, you can tune in to www.Mocha Speaks to Inspire. You'll have the audio version. You can also tune into my Mocha Speaks YouTube for the video version. And just stay tuned, stay active, and stay involved in your community.
Bye.